So I'm very pleased to be able to welcome our keynote, even though he doesn't want me to call him a keynote speaker, Cole Camplese, who's the Senior Director for Teaching and Learning with Technology here at Penn State. And for those of you that aren't familiar, that's sort of the group that manages education technology services, all the classroom labs and computer labs, as well as all the IT training services that the university provides. Cole's going to be talking to us about digital expression and some new forms of online communication that I think is really going to be interesting. So Cole, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, let's see. This would be embarrassing if I can't make this work. Okay. All right, well, good morning. I am Cole Camplese. I'm just going to start out with this, just a quick story, two quick things. First, when John asked if I would do this, I said, absolutely, that's a great opportunity and a real honor to be able to come and speak with everybody here. But then I said, so what does he want me to talk about? He said, well, just give like a state of the union of ITS and what you do and computers and technology. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. So today is not going to be about URLs of where you go to find services that you can use in and around your classrooms. It's not going to be any of that kind of stuff. I wanted to do something that I felt would be a little bit more interesting, sort of maybe spark some conversation, discussion. And so I chose this title, If That Is Scholarship, We Are All Doomed, for a very specific reason. About a year ago, I was giving a talk for the Chronicle of Higher Education for their CIO conference. And I did this whole thing about digital expression and new forms of conversations. And I tried to talk about this idea that digital expression is a new form of scholarship. And at the end, the guy right in the front at a big round table, takes the microphone during the Q&A session and leans into it and says, well, if that's scholarship, we're all doomed. And he dropped the microphone and walked out of the room like one of those moves, like boom, like I'm done. And I just thought it was the most incredibly powerful statement to make. So I thought, why not rename my talk? I have an alternate title, How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Conversation as well, so that's another opportunity. I'm going to start with a couple caveats and some other kinds of things. The first thing is so many times, those of us who are viewed as technologists walk into rooms with those who think primarily about teaching and research. They think we're going to come in and we're going to say, oh, if you just use technology, everything will be okay. And the first thing I want to say is that is so far from the truth. That's not what I'm trying to say. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What I'm going to try to do today is help you think about embedded affordances within these technologies. And not the technologies themselves, okay? Because we're going to talk about Facebook and Twitter and Google and all this other kind of stuff. But I'm not saying turn around and convert your class into using those technologies. What I'm saying is it's important to look critically at those because there are embedded pedagogies within these things to be discovered and exposed. And it's really important to think critically about them. So that's the first one. The second is I'm going to get my frequently asked questions out of the way up front. And then if we do get to Q&A, you won't have to ask me this. So I'll start with this one. Don't you care about privacy? Of course. That's done. Doesn't that violate FERPA? Probably not, but check with counsel, I guess would be the answer. Isn't American higher education dying? No, I don't think so. And isn't all this technology killing students' attention spans? No. Okay? We're done. So a little bit about me to help frame this all up. You guys know what this is? Palm. No, it's Palm. So this was like the first technology that came into my life in a real way that was interactive. I don't know about you guys, but I was probably, I was young in 77 or 78 when my parents brought this box home and they hooked it up to the television set and it did this, right? You could bing, bing, and it was really engaging, as you're going to see. But like, you're going to meet my daughter and it's like, you see this? That's a ball. And my daughter said, Daddy, what's this thing? I said, well, sweetie, it's a ball. She said, no, it's a square. They don't understand the 2-bit era. So this is me. A few years later, this is my 12th birthday. And the reason I show this is I wanted you to see this right here. This computer was a birthday gift from my parents. They were professors at Bloomsbury University, and about this time they were adding them to their writing labs, right? Beginning to, and my dad got one on his desk. He was a psychology professor, and all of a sudden, he stopped getting memos, and he had no idea what was going on, and he thought, if I'm going to survive, I need to get the boy one of these to help me figure out what's going on here. But remember this is 84, this is before there was anything other than a wall outlet this thing plugged into. Remember that? Like, it just had one cord that plugged into the wall. There was no internet, right? You didn't go anywhere on this device. But I will say that what I discovered about this is that this was my first real realization that technology of this sort is a driver of social engagement. What happened here was my social status changed. I was the only kid in school who turned in papers that didn't have the little ripped notebook paper on the side. They were typed, right? I could put graphics in there. My friends would come over and we would sit and draw at this thing for hours. We'd try to write little programs and scripts to do things. It was a piece of social computing, right? Really, really crazy. For the last 15 years, I've taught courses in the College of Information Sciences and Technology, and currently I teach a doctoral seminar in the College of Education called Disruptive Technologies for Teaching and Learning. We're going to touch on some of that kind of stuff today. Now people use the A word to describe me. I'm an administrator. So great for me. This is our environment here. It's incredible. So, you know, John mentioned that my position, I work in information technology services. I work for the Vice Provost for IT. And when we do things, when we think about things for our students and our faculty and our staff, these are the kind of numbers that we have to think about. I mean, these are incredible numbers. And you have to realize it. You go across the country and you speak and you show these numbers and people's eyeballs pop out of their head. And I think, well, how do you coalesce community around this stuff? How do you get faculty to engage? How do you get your students on board with new technologies? The questions are just incredible. It's so challenging and amazing to be able to get to do that. So yeah, my organization manages about 450 classrooms and labs across University Park, and an ever-increasing amount at all the campuses as well. We get to work with really handsome faculty. Really my favorite part of the job. Isn't that the biggest blog you've ever seen? Chris Long has the biggest blog I've ever seen. And then we do training, over 10,000 hours of training we deliver all over campus. But really the thing that turns me on the most is that middle piece of really working with faculty to think about technology and how it influences teaching and learning. So these are my... Protect their privacy. I told you. These are actually my two children. They're real. As you can see, they're not digital. They're analog. Even though everybody tells us all these kids are digital these days. I mean, they do normal things, like they make pizzas and stuff. They engage in use of technology in really amazing ways. This is Madeline here. This is when she was probably about 3, I'm guessing, using Webkins. You guys know what Webkins are? Webkins are these little stuffed animals that have a code on them, that when your kid gets them, they go onto this website and they put the code in, and that stuffed animal comes to life in a digital form. And you have to do things to keep that animal alive, right? You have to feed it, you have to take it for walks and exercise that you build, and you do that by earning these things called Kins Cash, right? And the Kins Cash are interesting. You earn them not by playing. Well, you can play little games, but really to earn them if you do math and spelling and reading kind of activities, it's just unbelievable. Like Madeline, when she got this and she started working on this, her math and verbal skills went through the roof. But she also understood something really interesting about this. When she sat down at this machine, she grabbed the mouse and somehow she just made the instant connection that moving that moved a pointer on the screen. When the CD-ROM tray popped out, she actually put a disc on it. She didn't put a sippy cup on it. She understood what was going on here. She took risks. Now this little guy, this is Max. Max is now 6, Madeline's now 10, so they're 4 years apart. Max was born at about the exact same time as the iPhone. Okay? So his first interaction with technology had nothing to do with the paradigm that we've sort of come to realize, and that's mouse or trackpad, keyboard. It's all touch. He's unbelievable on a touch device. His expectations are squarely in the realm of touch. Hers are still, she's drifting over to that side, but she's still a computer user. And now think about that for a second. In 1984, I got a Macintosh. It took until about 1995 for us to be able to do something other than plug it into a wall and go online and interact with people. My daughter is born, she's still using the same computing paradigm that we all grew up with. 4 years later, my son is born, and he's completely in an entirely different place than I am. In the span of just 4 years, the difference between a freshman and a senior, the difference between coming to campus and leaving campus, completely and utterly different expectations with technology. And that's a really startling thing for people in my business to think about. It's not that the rate of change is accelerating, it's just changing, right? And almost every one of these paradigm shifts shatters the last now. And that's what's becoming really interesting about the use of technology to support all this. This is Madeline's blog, it's Maddicast Space. I removed the URL to protect her privacy, obviously, but she does this now from a mobile device. So she takes pictures and she writes stories. She's the girl at school that turns in her travel reports in blog format, not in blue book format. It's absolutely, really pretty amazing stuff. And then I saw this quote and I thought I'd just share this. Going to school is like getting on a plane. You sit down, strap in, and turn off all your stuff. You can't turn them back on until you've landed at the other side. Right? And that's really interesting. And then if you have young children and you go to like the elementary schools, you see signs like this. This is the highest honor you can receive in the state of Pennsylvania for excellence. I want you to notice this one word right here. That's inspiring stuff. These are all over the walls of Coral Street Elementary, which, by the way, state college school districts are some of the tops in the state, and they have achieved adequate yearly progress, which really makes me happy to see. I could spend an hour just talking about this sign and what it means. So let's move forward a little bit. So our emerging students, and I put emerging there like that because we've been told for so long that next year's students are going to be the ones who get it, right? All the digital natives are coming, it's happening. No, it's still the same, right? You know, we've been for 25 years collecting data on students' use of technology, and every year they rate themselves as novices. Think about that, right? Every year they rate themselves as novices. And it's a lot of really interesting stuff. There's this, right? And I fall prey to this as well. I walk into my classroom and my students, even my doctoral students, have their phones out, right? You know, on their laptops, and they're doing this. And you just don't know what to do. And you say, well, they have such a short attention span. You know, they can't focus. But this is like a teenager's bedroom. Look at this. High definition cameras, access to the internet, musical instruments, the ability to construct, create, share in the pocket, you know, high definition in their pocket. This is the stuff that scares the heck out of IT people because just a few years ago, we'd lock this up and we'd make them come to us and check it out and we'd say, what class are you in, right? Now they bypass us completely. It's beginning to happen at a really interestingly accelerating rate. And this is the quote, right? Alan Kay, technology is only technology to those born before technology. It's absolutely the truth. And that's why they're rating themselves low on technology is they don't see the things that we see them do as interacting with technology, right? They see Microsoft Office as technology. They don't see the ability to connect and share digitally as technology. It's a really, really interesting thing that's going on. And more on these surveys, we're seeing this in the open-ended sections. We're seeing students say, I want to be able to do what I can out there. And by out there, they mean, you know, not on our network, right? They're used to environments that are like this, and this is Facebook. And Facebook is an insane environment where millions of people connect on a daily basis. It's engagement, and they do real-time engagement here. And then our alternative is this. We provide them a tool like Angel, that they do everything but engage in that space. It's absolutely unbelievable. And look, I manage this, so I'm allowed to be critical of this, so don't worry, you're not hurting my feelings. I get all the emails. We just renewed with Angel. I got about 40 emails over the weekend telling me how disappointed everybody was in that. Okay. The expectation more and more is something like Twitter. And this is an explosive technology on our campus. And if you don't believe me, just go to Twitter and search, just set up a search for Penn State or PSU, and you'll be blown away at the ocean of conversation that's happening under the surface that we don't even see, right? But this is the real-time web, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Our reality is we still send them email and communicate with them in this way, right? The expectation now is completely mobile, everything in their pocket. At Penn State, this is our reality. That's not a mistake, that's the reality, you know? We're just now catching up to this conversation. The expectation are environments that engage them like this. This is World of Warcraft. You and I look at this and say, what a waste of time. Students look at this and they see teamwork, collaboration, participation, real-time engagement, and our environments still look like this. You know? And we wonder why they're looking at us crazy from the back of the room. Well, why? Let's look at a little bit of why this might be happening. This is some stuff from both Pew and some folks at Stanford. The new complexity of the new media ecology in the home. So if you think about what the home media ecology looked like in 1975, it was a very simple time, right? Things were very, very simple and relatively linear. We didn't have devices that both stored and showed at the same time, right? We had 8 tracks and cassettes and VHS tapes, and we had a different device for that. We couldn't take that anywhere with this. I don't know about you, I had 3 channels in 1975, right? And my dad would go out and literally turn the antenna to get them. I was the remote control. Were any of you the remote control in your house? Yeah, so I don't know about you, Mike. My dad would actually do this. He would sit there and he'd say, let's watch something else. And he'd go like this, because there were remote controls available on the planet. And that was my cue to actually get up and go over and turn the TV channel. It's a great father. But look at today's home media ecology. It's a mass, and it's a mess, right? Everything is demanding attention at all times. And working to filter that is becoming more difficult. And then it terrifies me even more when I look at a graph like this. This is from Nielsen, and this is a year old. But look at this. Okay, so TV you would actually say is a relatively embedded technology in the home, right? With 115 million homes with at least one TV. Already, we have 83.2 million mobile phone web users. We're talking about a technology that's only 5 or 6 years old. It's incredible how this has completely shifted all the expectations and challenged all the things that we're trying to produce. Okay. So before I go forward, I need to go back just a little bit. This is the first internet. Remember the first internet, 95 or so? It was a very static place. Even USA Today and New York Times didn't update their website multiple times during the day. It wasn't until 1995, I think, that USA Today updated a morning and an evening online. And everybody on the world said, oh my God, news is actually going on all the time, right? But it was hard to create for it. You had to write stuff that looked like this, and this is not the way we write. And the web at that point was a one-way platform. We figured a little bit about commerce, but the web was actually invented by researchers to allow people to collaborate across great distances and across multiple platforms. And we sort of destroyed it for a while until we moved into what Tim O'Reilly calls the architecture of participation, or Web 2.0. And for our story today, we're just going to talk about Web 2.0 as easy, available, collaborative, participatory. But at the end of the day, if you take nothing away from this slide other than the fact that what's happening online is not about technology, it's about people. It's about people connecting directly to other people and generating new ideas together, building what I'll call new forms of conversations. And that's the argument that I'm going to make for the rest of the time that I have here, is that we are constructing new forms of conversations online that right now look so foreign and odd to us, but they are the everyday activities of the students that are coming to spend time on our campus very, very soon. So what are we afraid of? Well, for me, things have really changed in the IT world, how they access information. And I'm sure you're even seeing this in your own lives now, that if you're on Facebook or you're on Twitter, that's where you're getting much of your reading. You know, those are the recommendations. That's where it's happening. It's purely how it's happening for our students. All of their recommendations come through their social networks, and there is plenty of data to suggest and to prove actually that kids actually only participate on social networks with people that they really know. So the fear that they're out there talking to strangers is largely unfounded. They actually understand how to navigate the environments much better than we do. How they connect with media, 40% of our students watch TV on their computer, so they don't even bring televisions to campus anymore. The first thing that they plug in is not the cable jack, it's the Ethernet jack in the dorms. We have bandwidth limitations in our dorms, right? Because students have a tendency to steal music, right? But now, watch 1 or 2 games on your MLB.com subscription and you wiped out your bandwidth for the week and you get a ResCom violation. It's terrifying for students. How they control media, DVRs, you know what these are. TiVo, it's the only way they consume. The Office is not on at 9 o'clock on Thursday anymore. It's on whenever they want it to be on. And that shattered the expectation relative to response time. So if a student is like the chairman of the board of NBC, there's a really strange thing that goes on when they send you an email and you don't get back to them right away, right? They're empowered in new kinds of ways. And how they create media, this is phenomenal. This is an 18-month-old stat, but a third of our students reported creating and sharing media online. A third. And half of those they reported were for classes. And that's a huge shift. Huge, huge shift. So, you know, this is all disruption, and that's a lot of the things that I study and think about. But we've been down this path so many times like this. This is a great disruptive technology. I'd like to show the teacher knows as little how to use it as his pupil, right? That's got to be the computer or the internet, but this is a quote about the chalkboard from 1840, right? Now, think about a chalkboard for a minute. A chalkboard is a highly disruptive technology to a classroom. because it fits the standard definition of disruption. It challenges and changes the way that people interact with those around them, and it disrupts their workflow. So in 1839, you're fine, right? 1840, you come back, there's this big black thing in the room, and you're like, I have to turn my back on my students for the first time in my entire career. I have to be able to spell, right? I have to write. You ever notice all elementary school teachers write the same way? Right? That's a pedagogy. It's actual teaching practice. It was developed to manage that technology. And this has gone on over and over again. And if you look at all these technologies, everybody always says the same thing. Half of the people in the world say, the chalkboard will destroy education. The other half of the world says the chalkboard is going to save education. And remember when the iPad came out just a few years ago, all the rhetoric around, it's going to destroy and it's going to save. And here we are, we just keep working. Some people use them, some people don't. It's pretty standard stuff. You say, well, the web is scary. Well, here are two quick thoughts. Many of you I recognize from our Teaching and Learning and Technology Symposium that we've been doing for 2 decades. And it's this wonderful day on a Saturday. We get 400, 450 faculty, staff, and students come to the Penn State and spend the day with us. And we encourage people to take pictures and tag them with a tag. And, you know, we get all these, look at this great looking people. But they're by hundreds of different people, right? And they all aggregate together, and it's amazing. And we're the experts, and we know how to do this. And so 1 year, 2 years ago, I think this is, yeah, TLT Sim 09, 3 years ago, at the end of the evening, it's like 11 o'clock at night, I'm looking through the photos, and I'm like, this is so awesome. Look at all these what the, right? Like this. She wasn't at the symposium. But this is crazy, okay? So this was the first time this ever really happened in my world, and that is that I got really crushed by the same thing that I study and think about, right? Like the provost was not amused at this, like you can imagine, right? Because I had sent, it was Rod at the time, I had sent him the link, like, look at the great pictures from the day, thanks for doing the introduction. Who the hell is this lady at the symposium? Right? But this is what happened. These are tags, right? The same way that we were aggregating things together. What this individual did was, that day, Twitter has these things called trending topics. And on that day, TLT Sim 09 was a trending topic. It's pretty cool, right? Well, it's actually a he, I talked to this guy. He removed the tag for me, which was very nice of him, but he inserted these photos into the conversation of the trending topics of the day, right? So these photos tell a story, right? But our photos told a story. Right? And this was his way of interjecting a comment into our story in a really, really real way. And, you know, we're the experts. And what has just happened to us, right? Here's another one, identity concerns. This is really fascinating to me, like that our identities are shaped so much by the things that we do online. But it used to be, it would take John and I years to get to know each other. Now before I go to meet with him, my administrative assistant has a folder for me where we found his blog, we know his Twitter handle. If he's on Digo or Delicious, I know that. I can look at his Tumblr. I know all sorts of stuff about him, so I can have these really good conversations when I sit down with them. I'm profiling all of you as we sit down. But these it's not stalking, you're putting it out there. I'm just collating it, putting it in a folder, and keeping it in a dossier. Have you guys seen this video?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is David. For those who have not seen this, and I have not tested the volume, so this may come on really loud or really quietly. So this is David. The setup for David is that he's coming back from the dentist and he's had some surgery. And his dad decides to turn around and shoot a video and in the moment post it directly to YouTube. So just take a look at this for a second.
Yeah, I know. How did it go?
I didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
I feel
Kind of felt good, didn't it?
Is this real life?
Yeah, this is real life.
Okay, now. Oh, now I have 2 fingers.
Good.
Oh, 4 fingers.
4 fingers?
So I'll let you watch the rest of it, okay? It's on the internet. It's available. But this is really an interesting phenomenon to me because David is a child. He's not granted permission. Forever, he's the drugged out kid in the backseat of the car. This is his first digital fingerprint on the internet. This will add up to his big I identity someday. These are all little I moments. But the thing is David didn't do this. The child did. The parent did this, right? And the parent chose unwisely with the platform in which he chose to share this, right? Because we don't understand yet the affordances of these platforms. Think of the Flickr example, right? We didn't understand that somebody could just do that and that they would do that. This guy didn't understand that by posting it to YouTube, that instantly millions of people had access to it. And the second it hit there and people started to like it and vote it up, it went viral. When you read about this, and this guy's been interviewed over and over again, all he wanted to do that day was share this with his wife and the child's grandmother. But he didn't understand that, well, maybe I should put it on Facebook or email it or wait, like a half hour, right? But the idea is here that we're all learning, like open engagement is really, really difficult. And we're still trying to figure this stuff out. So the work that's going on within the liberal arts and the things that you're thinking about and doing is, the train has not left the station on any of these things. I mean, we're 5 or 7 years into something that is changing everything that we think about and we do, but we're just at the beginning of it, but it needs to be studied more. So let's explore some new forms of conversations. We'll start with social environments. Facebook is probably the one that we all know the most. This is a little old, but 845 million active monthly users in December 2011. That's a lot of people. This is from the year before, and if you look at that, just in January of 11, it was only 600 million. So with not even 12 months, another 250 million people. But look at the populations of like North America, 344 million. I mean, there's a lot of active engagement going on within that environment. And it's not just kids. Adults themselves spend more than 7 hours a month on Facebook, but that doesn't include mobile access. And that's what's wrong with all this data now is mobile is a constant connection to all of this kind of stuff. But the one you should look at here is over 90% of Penn State students are active, and a quarter spend more than 5 hours a week on Facebook. That doesn't sound like much, but when we asked that question, we did that through a sponsored pulse survey. We went 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 plus, because we thought, these kids aren't going to, that's ridiculous. Nobody would spend more than 5. So we have absolutely no idea what's going on with this really on our campuses. By the way, that's the same amount of time they self-report that they study in a week. I swear it's crazy. And I think one is overinflated and one is probably
The number of hours they go to class.
yeah, maybe. Probably doesn't even that up there, right? So that's Facebook, and Facebook's interesting. Facebook's like sort of what I just did and what I was thinking about. Twitter, on the other hand, is the real-time web. And Twitter lets you communicate instantly with 140 characters or less. It was designed as a mobile platform first. You see updates from people you are following, okay? And followers see your updates, and that's a very different type of engagement than Facebook. Facebook, you enter into a relationship. It's called a friend, right? We have to agree. Twitter, I can follow really smart people, and they know better than to follow me back, right? So Twitter is, in a lot of ways, there's Ben Harwood. Is not only a social recommendation network, but it's a professional development network for me. I connect to colleagues around the country who do the same kind of things that I do and follow them on Twitter. Many of them don't follow me back, or I follow them, but so it's really interesting. So I got a lot of the current data for this presentation from a tweet I just saw from one of my colleagues at another college. And I didn't set that up, I swear that's true. So this is what's insane. The speed of these new conversations is what's driving. It's not that they're just happening, it's the speed with which they're happening. This is a graph of 30 seconds after the earthquake that we had here. Remember we had an earthquake in Pennsylvania? I was standing outside the computer building with a colleague, and we were like, okay, what just blew up in State College because we don't have earthquakes? And I see people coming out of the building, nobody had any idea what was going on. I go to Twitter and instantly my feed is just filled up with not just that there was an earthquake, but the magnitude of it, the links to the data. CNN didn't have it, USA Today didn't have it. This is the spread of tweets for 30 seconds. Look at that, the reach. And just how quickly this information flows because people are connected to other people. And you say, so what? But this is the so what, that these are connected communities, right? And it's the speed at which conversations and information are created that has been radically changed. This picture is from Beaver Stadium for the spring game right after the Virginia Tech tragedy, right? And that's, you can't really see it, it's the best picture I could find, is the flying VT symbol where the big S usually is. So by Monday, there were about 25,000, 30,000 Penn State students in Facebook that had formed a group, Penn State Supports Virginia Tech. And within hours, the president saw that and they bought these t-shirts and decided to do this. And it's not that that wouldn't have happened otherwise, but it would have taken us a month to put that together otherwise, right? So it shortens the cycle with which these conversations are happening. So let's look at some, from disruption to best practices. I'm going to talk about 3 things, and John, I know I don't have enough time, but you invited me. Multi-channel discourse. Many of us look at our classrooms like this, and I'm going to draw upon my own teaching in this portion of the show. You know, everybody on laptops sitting back there trying to find ways to engage them. So my colleague Scott McDonald and I did something, this is in 2008, we put a second screen in our room with a second projector, and we said, okay, you're going to be on those machines, we're going to project what it is that you're doing up here. So we have our stuff, you know, whatever we were talking about on one screen, and then we have their stuff on the other screen, and it's flowing through Twitter. And we're using a hashtag to bring it all together, right? So in 2008 we did this, and it was great in 2008 because nobody was using Twitter, right? So it was a clean channel, but we'd have a hashtag, but we would sit there and talk, and we would watch what the kind of questions they were asking and the kind of encouragement they were giving each other. It was really quite interesting. And then you guys know the Chronicle of Education are, right? You buy it at the checkout line. I kid, this is on television, isn't it? Sorry, Chronicle. So they did this article, right? It appeared in a flash. I'll just let you read it. I'll summarize it. Crazy professor uses students as lab rats and encourages them not to pay attention. It really was the story. I mean, it really was the story. And if you talk to the Chronicle, they're great because they're like, this is so interesting. This is, and then they just throw you under the bus. Anyway. But one thing the Chronicle does is they allow comments. And for a while, this was the most commented upon article in the Chronicle ever online. Okay? First comment was great. What a great idea. I may have to try this in my next class. I didn't write that. That was great. That actually happened, right? Then they get like this. What happens when the student's answer is wrong? Now there's a distracting class where misinformation may be taking center stage. All right, just sort of sounds like standard discourse, right? But then they really got good. This one was really pretty awesome. You techies would teach through your wazoos if you could wire it and get your president to fund it. Which isn't true. It's not. It's not true. But then here's the next one. So the Chronicle makes you register to leave a comment. So this guy put his real name in, and his name was Landrum Kelly. And this is the next comment. Are you the Landrum Kelly from Lander University? If so, your ratings online from Rate My Professor show that you may have already adopted that innovative practice. It's a flame war on the Chronicle about who's on Twitter. Right? And so there were over 100 comments. And as you can imagine, about half of them were completely and utterly negative. And the other half were about the opposite, right? And so this woman, Cindy Lee Underhill, did a Wordle, and look at this. There's the positive, and look at those together. I mean, literally, if there were 100 comments, 50 said we were the devil, and 50 said we were angels, right? That's how polarizing any of these conversations are. And if you actually read the article that Scott and I wrote about this, you'd find that students use Twitter in an absolutely ridiculously productive way to open up a second channel of conversation. We had brilliant face-to-face, real-time dialogue, but they were able to talk to each other in real time while we were doing that as well. Unbelievable phenomenon that happened in the class that semester. And this is sort of to the point. This was one of the last comments. This was actually one of my students. We didn't commission this. This wasn't for extra credit. But what was interesting was this, that she said, when the course ended, I experienced a tremendous loss. And what was interesting about that, when we unpacked it with Becky, who's now an assistant professor at the University of South Florida, she said it was the fact that the class went from a class to a community. Because we as the students were connected with one another, not just for the 3 hours a week we sat in that room, but the entire time we spent over those 15 weeks. They created a bond because they had a mediated technology that was engaging to them and allowed them to communicate in real time. Really neat stuff. I'll do this quickly. Actually, you know what? No. So this is one of our platforms. I told you I wasn't going to sell platforms, but this is one that we really like. Our blogs at Penn State, a really interesting platform that does some things that allow people to put content online in a really new and interesting way. So the old school web publishing model looks like this, right? You make files that look like this, right? And then you use tools called FTP and stuff. They look like this. To put them online, you use web browsers to look at them. Everything's wrong. You have to start over. And if you're like me, when I teach, my classes aren't really about technology, but I want them to publish online. And for the longest time, I was having to teach them this stupid process to put stuff online, and I gave up on it ultimately. I stopped doing portfolios and all that kind of stuff and went back to just turn in your Word doc, right? Well, now we have this simplified publishing model, so where you just log in, you type, and you publish, and it's actually like a path from thought to online. They don't think about anything in between. It's really pretty staggering. And if you look at the growth over the last 4 years, I just updated these. You know, we have 46,000 blogs at Penn State right now. I mean, think about that for a minute. That's unbelievable. The number of entries are approaching 300,000, but what's really interesting about this notion of the comments. So not only are people writing, but their colleagues, their peers, their fellow students, other people are commenting on those posts almost at a 1-to-1 ratio. And this is really interesting as well. Assets, and assets aren't just pictures. Assets are actually things like Word documents and PDFs, examples of their work. So they're doing their work and turning it in the way we want them to, but then many of them are taking it and uploading it and attaching it to a post and engaging in some real reflective practice. You know, some really interesting metacognition around what is it that I actually did to get this assignment done. That's a really powerful and important switch. This is the other thing. When we launched the blogs, the security office said, well, if you're going to do it, they have to be private because nobody wants a public website. These are our private versus publics. Rest my case. And we knew that this was powerful based on an experience that I had when I was in IST. I used to be in the College of IST, and in one of my roles, I administered the Pennsylvania Governor's School for Information Technology. And if those of you remember governor schools, they were amazing programs, 5-week residency program, juniors in high school becoming seniors. They come on our campus. Well, I would teach them all in this one big class. There were 80 of them. I'd put them in teams, and one year, this is maybe 05, we said, okay, once a week we're having a speaker come in. You designate a team leader to blog about the speaker. So we get 12 different perspectives on the speaker. We had the director of the FBI Cybercrime Lab come in. And he's talking and slamming his fist on the desk. This is around Napster time. He's like, if you steal music, we'll find you. We will throw you in jail. You know, like literally like pounding his fist. And the kids are back there blogging, using words like Nazi. It's not a good word. So we didn't check. It was an evening, so we go home. I come in the next morning. Virginia Belzer, who was the academic programmer director, comes running into my office. She's like, oh my God, you see the blogs? You're never going to believe it. I read the first post, I'm like, I'm done. The second one, like, we're all done. Third one, like, the university's done. I mean, they really ripped this guy apart. So I'm getting ready to call up to the dean's office and say, we have a real problem here. And all of a sudden, I realized the FBI finds stuff. Like, it's their job to find things. The director didn't call the governor, didn't call the dean, didn't call the president, didn't send a nasty email. He logged in and left a comment. And then he logged in and left a comment on the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And they were all like, well, you guys don't understand. And then the students did something weird. They left comments. And over the course of 2 weeks, this the director of the FBI Crime Lab continued to comment back and forth with the students. It funneled down to where one blog ended up with about 300 comments, back and forth. Students, they invited him back to give the closing talk. It was unbelievable. It was a 1-hour presentation that turned into 2.5 weeks of discourse where he ended up saying, okay, I get your perspective. I can approach this differently. And they were saying, oh, I get your perspective. This is illegal, and this is why this is illegal. Unbelievable. From that moment, we thought, you know, there's something interesting around giving people a platform that they can engage in real discourse and dialogue. Really, really amazing, eye-opening thing. Here's Chris Long's blog. I just wanted to show again how big it is on the big screen here. But Chris does something really interesting, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but he does something, and I've modeled this behavior. He uses students as authors. And it's one big environment where they work together, and it doesn't end at the end of the semester. It continues on. And I've done that with my class, and so now that I'm in the 3rd year of teaching it, what's interesting is my current students are citing students from 2 years ago. They're drawing upon their articles and their posts. It's really quite fascinating. This is a great blog at Penn State. She has her students write personal histories, and then she mines those histories to do her own writing and her own research. Really cool stuff. This is Sam Richards. I know you guys know Sam Richards. But his classes are big, but look at those kinds of comments. And these are substantive comments. It's not just like, I mean, these are there's real dialogue. And in many cases, this isn't even the graded part of the class, right? They're still doing all that other work. They're just participating in conversations when they're not in class and another channel, encouraging each other and talking to one another. And now you can go to sites.psu.edu. We're launching a new service with all new blogs and stuff like that. So sites.psu.edu. But to meet expectation, it has to be easier. We've started to see what we call the emergence of the one-button web. So the way youth publish online is very different than the way we do. See that little round button up there, Share FB? That's a bookmarklet, and when I click that, right, it pops up this little box, and then it instantly shares it to Facebook, right? So I've not actually done anything other than, yeah, this is interesting, I'm sharing it. But we did the same thing within our blogging environment, primarily for graduate students, because they were asking for a way to do annotations and bibliography kind of things. You highlight the text that you want to, then you hit the share button, and it pops up the interface. And what it does is it then takes that piece that you've highlighted, brings the link in, and instantly publishes it on your blog at Penn State. And so what's going on there is then once that happens, right, it sends a tweet out to their embedded community of followers they've shared. It publishes it to Facebook, to a very different embedded community of people that's following them and they're friends with, right? And so really what we're seeing is we're seeing a shift to like from consuming to creating to managing to sharing in a single click. And that's the explosion of the way publishing online is moving, is that it's now one button, share, and when it's shared, it's instantly shared to hundreds, if not thousands, and sometimes millions, depending on the kind of network or platform that they're sharing into. And they understand this. This is the last piece, John. I'm running late, but the only thing that I'll mention here is I'll mention two things. One is teenage girls are literally the blood of the social web. Girls publish online, teenage girls publish online so much more than boys. And our own data around the blogging platform shows that girls stay engaged in blogging well after the semester. So if they're required to blog for a class, they keep their blog alive even after the class. Boys write their 5 assignments and they're done, right? The only thing teenage boys do more online than girls is share video. That's it. Why? And this is what they say. Almost all the time people comment on their stuff, right? That's very, very important to them. So let's look at this, and this is the last portion of the show, John, I promise. YouTube. This is interesting. This is 2 years old, but 2 years ago on our FACAC survey of faculty, a third of our faculty reported using YouTube as a teaching tool, right? They use the projector most. That's most. The podium computer second. YouTube is third now. That's crazy. But they use it as like a film strip projector, right? Let's watch this video and be done with it. Well, there's this really interesting thing going on online where, you know, this is what you see when you're producing a YouTube video, and most of the videos on YouTube are these of this type. It's called the Hey YouTube, What's Up, right? You sit down and people actually just look at their camera and they say, Hey YouTube, what's up? Because they know they're talking to an audience. They just don't know who that audience really is quite yet. And it's really quite kind of crazy because they're doing it in these private spaces, but they know the second they hit the submit button that millions of people can engage with it. So we're going to talk about remix just for a few minutes. So this is Darth Kitty, or Hello Vader, I guess. You could go that one too. I don't know which one I like better. This is Irving Fields, and I want to show you this really quickly because this is the first form of remix, and remix is a conversation. So this is Irving. Irving is about 83 years old, I think, and this is his song, the YouTube.com theme song.
You'll find the whole world for what you're looking for. YouTube.com, it's a blessing for mankind, that's for sure.
See the wife walking through the back of the right. She's important. Okay, so when I started to look at this, I was not so much impressed with the views. I mean, he's only gotten 850 million views. I mean, that's pretty weak. But what started to blow my mind is when I looked at this, not just the 8,000 comments, but then I started to look at what these things are called video comments. And people not just typing, way to go, Irvin, that was really great, but sitting down and composing some sort of reaction response to this. And this is the first form of remix. This is just sort of the shot-for-shot remake, okay? Irving's better, by the way. But here in a second, you'll see the wife walks in the room. And she does the same, she goes through the same, so see, she comes in the room, it's the same shot-for-shot reality of the Irving Fields. So that's sort of the first piece of remix culture as we're seeing it online right now. It's this idea that I produce, I react, but I just mimic, okay? This is another one, many of you have seen this, I'm sure. This is Charlie Bit My Finger.
Charlie bit me.
All right, it's cute, right? Okay, that's look at those views, right? That's unbelievable, right? Now, what's crazy about that is, you know, that's more than all the summer blockbuster films put together. There's no marketing behind this or anything. But if you go out and you look at this, and I'm sure all of you have 16, 20 hours to just burn, it's been changed, shifted, remixed over 2,000 times just in video, right? So there are shot-by-shot remixes. But what's really interesting is you start to see the Halloween version where the finger gets, boom, it's off, right? There's what happened just before, right? What's happened after? Charlie now grown up. It's happening in dorm rooms and apartments and gymnasiums all over the country. It's a conversation that people are having with the original producer of this and every subsequent person that posts a comment about it. And I think those are conversations. This is the last piece. So this is really interesting, and I know Alan's seen this before, so you know, you'll see what you think. Okay, so this is a Bob Fosse, Gwyn Verdon production here. Okay, this is called Mexican Breakfast. This is television, you know, back in the day. I could not find a high definition version of it, so you just have to bear with me. But just watch this for a second here. This was Sunday Night TV. I gotta let you get a flavor for it. Okay, so that's Mexican Breakfast. This disappears online forever, right? And then it reemerges in 2007, and it comes back as this thing called Walk It Out Fosse. Okay, I don't know if you've seen this, but what people begin to do is they take that original clip and they start to play with things.
Now walk it out, 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 walk it out. Where's that walk it out, 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 walk it out. Now walk it out, 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 walk it out.
Okay, so that's like one. Then there's like, this is the Black Eyed Peas version of it. And really what's crazy is each one of them really changes in complexity. They start to play with tempo, they start to play with emotion, they do very different things with this. So you can see here they timed it and all this stuff, right? Okay, there are thousands of these, trust me, there are literally thousands of them. But then you start to look at them and you start to see, wow, there's something really interesting going on when this happens. I don't know if you've ever heard of Beyonce. Yeah, she's this person who sings on the radio. So she sees this, Mexican Breakfast, right? It's Bob Fosse, dance, Gwyn Verdon. She's popular, so she decides to do her own remix and release it as her music video. Essentially, it's a shot-by-shot remake and remix of the original. It's unbelievable. When you sit down and you look at it, you find an article where she actually says, oh yeah, I completely did that. I ripped off the whole thing and remixed it top to bottom because all these kids were already watching this. This is the culture and this is how it's going. And I'm Beyonce and I'm going to win a Grammy. You know? And she did it for that. So this is the last little video. So you see that progression, right? Of original to remix to now mainstream. And then if you've watched Glee, I don't know if you've ever seen Glee. So this was actually on this was on a television program on TV with real writers and everything else. And they essentially do it's just unbelievable, to my mind. Yeah, a complete remix of the original Mexican Breakfast. And in my mind, these are never-ending stories or conversations. And if you think about it, the Fosse remixes, so if you go back and you look at the original Mexican Breakfast, there are people that reenact that just as it is with that music. And then somebody gets the idea, well, we're going to build this whole other genre of conversation around this, the Walk It Out remixes, right? Where now there are hundreds and thousands of these, which one touches Beyonce, and then there are thousands of remixes of just that Beyonce video, right? There's all the married ladies, all the divorced ladies. I mean, you should watch them. You have all the time in the world. And then it hits things like Glee. And the sad thing is there are high school football teams all over the country remixing that one, and they're not as good at dancers as they probably. But those are never-ending stories, and those are new forms of conversations that we're seeing emerging online. And I have 2 points, really, I swear. One was just to show some videos, but the first is to, there are new pedagogies embedded in these environments to be discovered and supported. I started at the beginning by saying, don't go teach with Facebook, but don't dismiss it as well. There are layers of engagement in there that are really, really interesting that you need to unpack and find ways to connect those kinds of uses of technology in your own teaching, right? And this is how I got nailed by my guy at the Chronicle, but this is what I really feel. Digital expression is a form of scholarship, and it must be systematically supported. And that means events like this in faculty development. It means media commons that change the landscape of what our labs look like. It means training, it means conversations, and it means platforms. But most of all, it means people engaging with other people. And that's it. So I give you your data.